Hey, what's going on, everyone? So wanted to make a video this morning. Don't know if you've heard this already. If you're a baseball fan, you probably have. Carlos Correa just signed a huge deal with the New York Mets, 12 years, $315 million. Now, if you haven't been paying attention, you're saying, wait a minute, isn't he on the Giants? Well, last week, he signed a 13-year deal for $350 million, which was going to be the longest free agent deal since Bryce Harper did so with the Phillies. But the deal fell apart yesterday after a failed physical by the Giants. So that allowed Correa to go and negotiate with other teams. And here he is now signing with the Mets. So we're going to get into a bunch of things here. How did this happen with the failed physical? What's the story behind that? Is this good for baseball to have the Mets with this humongous salary? We're going to get into that in a second. And then, is this a good move as far as signing Correa to this deal? You're giving him a whole lot of money for a whole lot of years. Could the money have been spent better in other ways? So we're going to get through all three of those things. Put down below what you think your answer is to all three of those questions. Okay, so first let's start off with how did things fall apart between the Giants and Correa, because he had that huge deal. Well, he was actually supposed to be introduced yesterday. And if you're a Giants fan, I'm assuming most people were pretty darn excited about getting Carlos Correa on their team. He's going to be kind of a centerpiece of their team. Not kind of, he's going to be a centerpiece of their team. And so you have this press conference that's supposed to happen, and all of a sudden it gets announced that the conference has been postponed, and there wasn't really any reason given for it. Well, what happened was there was an undisclosed medical concern that arose during Correa's physical. And so that's the word going around. Now, what exactly is that reason for the failed physical? We don't know yet. Maybe we'll find out later on. Maybe we won't. But once that happened, I'm assuming the Giants were probably renegotiating that deal. Maybe not giving him as much money. I'm sure they still wanted him, but the contract was probably being worked out in a different way. Maybe less years, maybe less money. What that did was that opened things back up for other teams to negotiate with him. And it turns out that the Mets and the Giants were kind of the last two teams that were bidding for him. He chose the Giants over the Mets, but he was quickly able to go back to the Mets, and the Mets started to renegotiate again. And that's how they were able to get a deal done so quickly, because they were actually very close to a deal last week before the Giants just beat them out. Okay, so we can't do one of these without looking at my boy Jeff Passan and see what he has to say. Here, Jeff said the New York Mets' current payroll is estimated to be around $384 million. The luxury tax payments alone will exceed $111 million. Their total payroll projects to be $495 million. The previous max payroll in baseball, less than $350 million. Mets are almost $500 million. And if you want to look at who the Mets have signed since free agency began, here's your list. $806.1 million. That's a whole lot of money. Now, here's a quote from owner Steve Cohen. He said, "We need one more thing, and this is it. This was important. This puts us over the top. This is a good team. I hope it's a good team. It better be a good team for that much money." So here's a question for everyone down below. Is this bad for baseball? You have a team and an owner that is just disregarding the luxury tax. They really don't care. 100 million over, does it become 200 million down the road? Like, who really cares? The luxury tax is put in place to keep teams from wanting to spend too much money because they're going to be taxed. But if you have an owner that says, $100 million, who cares? 150 million, who cares? Does that make baseball say, maybe we need to put in a hard cap like some of the other sports, where we're not just going to say, oh, you just have to pay extra money if you go over the cap. No, it's going to say you can't go over the cap. It's impossible to go over the cap. Will that happen? Should that happen? What are your thoughts? Because we have this one team now, and there's a handful of teams that spend a ton of money, but now you have one team that's spending way more than even the Yankees and the Dodgers and other teams that are spending, crazy amounts of money. And it's going to continue to widen the gap between the teams that can spend the money and the teams that, I don't want to say that they can't, but there's teams that don't want to. Now, some people will say, well, those teams need to spend money. There's too many teams in the league that say, I don't want to spend any money, and we need to get those teams to spend more money. And that is probably true as well. But what are your thoughts on this whole thing down below? Does baseball need a salary cap, or are we good the way we are? And now let's get into Carlos Correa. 12 years, $315 million. Comes out to, I'm not really good at math, but I think it's around like $26 to $27 million per year. 12 years, really long contract. He's 28 years old. Let's look into the numbers a little bit. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. We had Dansby Swanson that just signed a 7 years for $177 million, I think it is, which is right around $25 million per year. So Carlos Correa gets more money, a little bit more money, but he gets this humongously longer contract. And Swanson had a huge year last year. Doesn't have the exact track record that Carlos does offensively, but defensively, Dansby can pick it. He's one of the best defensive players in the entire league. So if we look at Carlos Correa here, you see he's 28 years old. We all know he was drafted first overall, or at least I think most people do. He's 6'4", 220. He's going to be moving, I'm assuming, to third base here because the Mets have, they got Lindor and they're loaded in the infield. So if we look at, first let's look at Baseball Savant, then let's just look at some of his percentile rankings. You can see both offensively and defensively. We know that he can smash baseballs. Basically grades out as great or close to great in most offensive metrics. You have average exit velocity. You've got max exit velocity, which is 96 percentile. You got hard hit percentage, which he's very, very good at. You have expected weighted on base average, which he's great at. Expected batting average, great. Expected slugging, barrel percentage. Most offensive things he's really, really, really high on. He's great at all of those. Sprint speed, he's average. Now outs above average. So defensively, they've got him down here at 18, which is poor, which is interesting. And moving to third base with his size and getting a little bit older, he's going to probably be a great third baseman, you would think. Doesn't need as much range over there, but should profile as a really solid third baseman. And then you have the arm strength. He's got a cannon. And again, I just pulled up some of his stats here. And if you look at the stats again, whether it's weighted on base average, he was second in the league when it comes to shortstops behind Bogarts. If you look at slugging percentage, he's second in the league behind Bo Bichette. Home runs, had a bunch of home runs, had 22 home runs I think he had last year. Only played in 136 games. So a lot of players, Dansby Swanson played in every single game. Lindor played in 161 games. So players that are ahead of him in home runs all played more games than him. So the guy can, again, we know that this guy can rake. Defensively, metrics weren't great. If you look at WAR, last year he was 9th in WAR, but again, he only played 136 games. So every player that's above him in WAR played in more games than him. Lindor led all of shortstops in WAR with 6.8. Again, this is according to Fangraphs. Lindor played in almost every game. Dansby Swanson was second in WAR at 6.4. Dansby played in every game. Trey Turner was third in WAR at 6.3. He only missed 2 games. So players that are finishing higher than him all played in way more games. So we do have one of the better shortstops in the league and transitioning over now to third base. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of years. The Mets really don't care. I think Carlos Correa is a really, really good player. I don't think anyone's going to say that Carlos Correa is a bad player. And I think if you're the Mets and money really doesn't matter, then go for it. This makes your team way better. I don't think anyone can say that adding Carlos Correa to your team doesn't make you better. And again, now, some teams might say, well, we could use the money someplace else, but the Mets print money, so it really doesn't matter. Do the Mets win the World Series next year? A lot of people already laughing, saying they'll still finish behind the Braves. Man, this team is loaded. I would assume they're going to probably be the favorites to win. I know they lost DeGrom, but then they just get Verlander and they get all these other guys. And so this is crazy, crazy, crazy talent. What are your thoughts in the comment section below? Good deal, bad deal. Mets win the World Series. Good for baseball, bad for baseball. A lot of things to discuss. Let me know your thoughts down below. That's all we have. We'll talk to you later.